This podcast is sponsored by Marianne Wecker's channel on YouTube. Go check her out and enjoy the podcast.
For our podcast, this is episode 7, Building and Fighting in the Colosseum.
We have a great show for you today, so make sure you stay to the end because we have some very special guests to introduce you to.
We have not only one, but 2 guests for you.
The Roman Colosseum has so much history that we don't even know where to start.
We have to start somewhere, so let's start at the creation of the Colosseum. The Colosseum was built around 70 to 72 AD. It wasn't until around 80 AD that the Colosseum was officially open.
Of course, the Colosseum wasn't called the Roman Colosseum. The Romans called it the Colosseum, the Flavian Amphitheater. This is more likely because the Colosseum was built and opened in the Flavian period of Rome.
Seating over 5,000 people, this architectural challenge is one of the most fascinating in history.
Now, the most interesting part is the fact that they started construction in 70 AD, meaning it only took them 1 to 2 years to complete. This means when construction started, it took 10 years for the Colosseum to finally be used by the people of Rome.
One of the most popular reasons archaeologists think that the Colosseum only took 1 to 2 years is because there were just about 100,000 slaves working on the Colosseum. Just around 70,000 were always working, taking breaks every 3 hours and switching through those who were resting.
Now, most of those slaves were working on brick stacking, but some worked on things like building amenities in the Colosseum. The early sign of a water fountain was actually found in the Colosseum.
Now, many people wonder if there was a reason that the Colosseum was built where it is. The answer is yes. Vespasian had taken possession of the area after a fire destroyed part of Rome in 64 AD, when Nero died. Vespasian chose to build the amphitheater right there, as a political move to show that he was giving back to the people what Nero had taken. However, there was also a particular reason. Choosing the basin meant saving more than half of the work needed to dig the fountains of the building.
We should ask someone that really knows, and that's our first guest. Please welcome our first guest and one of the slave builders of the Colosseum, Octave Belevian.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
No problem, we're happy to have you.
Me, Hannah, and the audience have been waiting to ask you a couple questions, if you're okay with that.
Ask away.
What was life like building the Colosseum?
It was terrible. There were seemingly endless days of blistering heat, moving tens of pounds of blocks in my arms for days on end. At least they kept those who worked at full strength to keep working.
What did you do after your time building the Colosseum?
I became a house guard for a rich patrician who was extremely paranoid for his daughter's safety. I was treated well there, and I liked that they at least gave me food and shelter. I often went to the forum with my master and his daughter as their guard.
What types of clothing did you wear?
I often wore a cotton tunic and stretchy wraps on my elbows, knees, ankles, and wrists to protect them while I worked. Sometimes, when I was guarding my master's daughter, I wore a little armor on top of my normal clothes.
How did you become a slave?
I was originally a prisoner because I was caught stealing, but I became a slave when they began to build the Colosseum.
Did you ever watch a gladiator fight?
Sadly, no. Gladiator fights were only for the rich and noble, and I was a slave, so I wasn't allowed to watch them.
If you had the chance to be a gladiator, would you?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't want to kill someone I knew or trained with.
Well, thank you so much, Octavia. We really enjoyed your time with us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, for those who don't know, the Colosseum was a large stone amphitheater just east of the Roman Forum. It held many battles, either between animals or between humans fighting out for survival.
Over 3,000 battles took place in the Colosseum, killing 2,000 Romans and over 9,000 animals.
Occurrences had man versus animal. These were probably the most entertaining to watch.
When animals fought each other, the winner was released into the wild while the loser was either killed by humans if they weren't already dead, or thrown into a fire if they were.
Humans, on the other hand, always fought to the death. Most contestants were slaves, and if a slave won, they were granted citizenship into Rome. If they lost, they were dead. Hence the whole fight to the death thing. There was only a handful of battles that actually had contestants of high-ranking nobles.
Remember the second guest we were talking about in the beginning? He's coming up to answer some questions we have in a little bit.
Because the Colosseum is so old, some famous myth has been told.
One of the most famous is that the person that thought of the Colosseum was a Christian, and he was forced to fight in the Colosseum and died. This has been disproven in over 5 studies by historians and colleagues.
While neither of us know what it's like to fight in the Colosseum, we have someone that does. Please welcome our second guest, Ruben de Lacrius.
Hello, Ruben. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
If you're okay with it, we have some questions we'd like to ask you.
Go right ahead.
How did you become a gladiator?
I was a slave after I chose that life instead of getting chucked from a rock for lying under court for quite a while. Building stuff, cleaning horse stalls, taking care of the master's children. It was torture, but when he offered me the chance to become a gladiator, I jumped at it.
What was the biggest challenge you have ever had?
Everything's difficult when you're fighting for your life and freedom, but usually the most difficult challenge is killing your fellow man. Your conscience is just never clean after killing those people.
What do you do to prepare before a battle?
Everything and anything. I never know what my opponent can do, who they are, what they are, so I have to be prepared for anything.
What is the best part about being a gladiator?
Well, the best thing is getting my freedom back, of course, yet the excitement of the fight and all the audience there, but there's a lot of pressure knowing I could die right then and there.
What do you do outside the arena when you're not fighting?
I work for my master and wait till I earn my freedom from that guy, as well as training.
What is it like fighting in the Colosseum?
It's nerve-wracking, knowing how many people are there, all the history I'm walking on, and it's terrifying, yet all I can think about is staying alive and getting free.
What did you fight besides humans and other people?
Whatever the people wanted. If they wanted me to fight an elephant, I'd fight an elephant. Fight a tiger, I'd fight a tiger. Fight a stinking bear, I'd fight a bear.
Well, that does it for our interview. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Well, folks, that's about does it for our time.
Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you again very soon. If you want the story behind Ruben's enslavement, watch the first hour 12 Tables court trial on YouTube.